Hello, and welcome to the second panel discussion that we have here prepared today. We're going to be discussing the functionality of fact-based systems with people from all over the world. And yeah, I'd love to first get a bit of an introduction from each of the panelists. They'll tell you a little bit about themselves, the organizations that they work with, and their area of specialization. We'll start with Beatrice Gamba. Nice to have you again, Beatrice.
Hi, thank you. So I am head of innovation at WorldLift. I joined WorldLift's team back in 2016, and I have over 9 experience in tech and digital companies. In fact, I oversee a team of 10 people. We have SEO experts, data analysts, AI experts, digital marketers, and we look after a portfolio of world-class companies, with diverse sizes. We have Fortune 500 companies, SMEs, and we guide them through the adoption of technologies on the web that can be knowledge graphs, generative AI, data science. So we are deeply rooted in data, and this is what our clients love, the fact that we are data-driven. And we basically take our clients by the hand and we let them achieve their digital goals. My bread and butter is in fact knowledge graphs and their potential for SEO. And this is what drives it for me and my team.
Thank you, Beatrice. Let's go on with Margaret Warren. Would you like to give us a few words?
Sure. Hi, I'm Margaret Warren, and I am the founder of Metadata Authoring Systems, and I'm the creator of a software as a system tool called Image Snippets, and I am a research associate with the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition. And with our tools that our team creates, we work with customers, many of whom usually are in the cultural heritage sector, who what we do with our tools is with image snippets, we are able to write annotations, not just annotations, but take image description itself and turn that into a knowledge graph using linked data. And so we can write 5-star linked data about image description. And we often use this for not just for asset management. So it's a data-centric system that uses the metadata itself for asset management, but also for SEO on the web. And so we're constantly like experimenting with this as well. And we feel like we're doing research as well as helping our customers at the same time. And we're very keen on helping people, helping the most obscure things in the world, the most obscure image content in the world be found in the most precise ways possible, be described in the most precise ways possible, but then also get the most value from that description. So we're looking at, truth and, what are the facts about images, and how do they, how does that help us, improve the quality of the web, which is something Beatrice said yesterday that I really admired. So, okay.
Thank you, Margaret. Stratos Kontopoulos, would you like to go next?
Hello all. Many thanks for the invite, Joaquin, and I'm very, very happy to be in this great panel with all those great colleagues whose work I have been monitoring anyway online. So yeah, I'm Stratos. I work as a knowledge graph engineer at Food Pairing AI. Food Pairing AI is a Belgian scale-up, ambitious company who offers consulting services to food companies wishing to create new products or to create twists of existing products. So in essence, what I do there is I help maintain and extend a large knowledge graph. To our knowledge, it's the biggest in the sector. That integrates diverse pieces of information with regards to food ingredients, recipes, sensory information, you name it. lots and lots of different things. As for a little bit of my background, I have a PhD in semantic web technologies, and I have been working with those same technologies ever since. It's almost 20 years now. I was fortunate enough to be working on various domains like e-health, cultural heritage, fintech, you name it. So I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to a great discussion.
Thank you, Stratos. Thalia Berry, would you like to give us a little bit on your background?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. Great to be here with you all today. I'm looking forward to learning a lot and contributing as well. My name is Thalia Berry. I'm an advisory UX researcher, specifically on the AI on IBM Z team, and been in this role for a little over 3 years now. And my research has revolved around how do we bring trustworthy AI capabilities to machine learning for IBM ZOS, which is one of our AI products. It's a platform, and basically communicating those insights and communicating with clients all around the world to make the best user experience possible in this age of AI that we now live in.
Can you give us a little bit of insight on the UX practice?
Absolutely, yes. So UX, for those who might not be familiar, stands for user experience. It's a field of design and research, sort of under the umbrella term of human-computer interaction. So it's all about, specifically as a researcher, I specialize in listening to people, asking the right questions at the right time to the right people, so that I can essentially create a set of design requirements based upon their user needs and their pain points, and make sure that the AI product experiences that our team is putting together are usable, as user-friendly as possible, valuable to businesses, and of course, involving trustworthy AI.
Wonderful. Well, I think this paints the context of the perspectives of the panelists, and I think we can dive into just painting the overall background of this discussion. I know in the preparation of this panel, I've had a few calls with some of the panelists, and the concern was how do we define a fact-based system? So I think we can start maybe defining what is content, what is the search engine, and then what is a question, what is a query? In no particular order. Anybody that wants to grab the question, feel free to do so. Yeah.
Well, when hearing about fact-based systems, what comes to mind is, all the expert systems. That's an older version of AI, let's say, based system nowadays. Those were mostly based on the expression, the representation of facts, factual knowledge of parts of the world, maybe a domain. For specifically pharmaceutical and medical systems were very popular back in the day. I think those were one of the first applications of fact-based systems. So in essence, let's get back to what Joaquin was mentioning, because I'm derailing the conversation. Facts, I think, and content is actually the first and foremost important thing that one modern data-based system, data-centric system should hold. So what format should this information have? There are multiple ways to formulate content. My preferred approach would be through a knowledge graph, through an ontology, right? But I think there are multiple ways to formulate that. The important thing is for content to be, I think, reusable, to be expressed in a way that is reliable and that it's 100% certain that there are no inconsistencies in the expression of content. So in essence, it's very flexible the way you could express content and facts in a system. You can choose your own formulation, but you have to follow certain approaches, I think, certain principles.
Anybody else want to
Yeah,
jump
in a
on
way, content. Yeah, content, I think it's information in any form that can be consumed by an audience. And then, of course, if it has to be consumed by people, it has to be findable. And I think that's where SEO and content marketing come into action. So search engines are, in this way, powerful tools that can bridge the gap between the user and the information that they are looking for. So they are helping navigating the web and making information accessible and findable to the user who may need guidance to reach the information that they are looking for. So in a way, search engine can also be like the ultimate user interface for people who need guidance into navigating the web.
Yeah, I think to jump in a little bit about it to bridge off that, I feel like when it comes to search engine, I mean, obviously, most of us are, everything is gauged by Google and what Google's done, and it's interesting to think that they're not the only search engine, and maybe someday other search engines can get better, and not necessarily using LLM based technology either. I sort of dream of that vision every day. But what we have is this strange symbiotic dance, I think, between the way that searchers, based on their degree of media literacy, form queries. And then, so Google is trying to predict what users want to see at the same time that they're learning from the way that users are forming queries, and users form queries based on what information they're going to get. And of course, underlying all of this is this profit motive to return products. And so, from my perspective, obviously, I work with images a lot. And historically, images as content on the web have been illustrative to other content. They're not necessarily first-class citizens in their own right. So that's one of the things that I do differently, is I make images first-class citizens. And that is sort of the same odd user experience that you have when you go to Google Images versus the Google All search. You're kind of swinging back and forth between these windows from a different perspective of when the image becomes first-class citizen. And I think that not all Google motives are bad. I think that they do want to genuinely get to real facts, but sometimes they're eager to just, return any kind of answer if they can, even if it's not fact, even if it's an AI generated image instead of what you're actually asking for. And even though what you are actually asking for is out there. And so I think I believe the key is to write this information in structured data, and then make the structured data so robust in a way that it becomes natural for search engines like Google and maybe others to, actually start using the structured data, as opposed to, the predictive kind of hybrid mix that we currently have. That's hard to figure out. But
Absolutely. I have a slightly different take on a fact-based system here, more from a UX research perspective, because I think theoretically, and maybe considering research operations-wise, one could consider UX research as a type of fact-based system in a sense. And I'll break that down a little bit, because I was thinking about this earlier today. For example, a big part of my job is, of course, data gathering, which I understand is a huge part of any fact-based system. You have to be considerate in how you're collecting that data, the structured data, right, as Margaret mentioned as well. And so based upon that, as a researcher, I have to think, am I screening qualified participants for a particular study?
True.
Am I getting a good mixture of qualitative and quantitative types of data? What is the research method that I need to choose based upon what my team needs to learn, what we're trying to ask our clients for feedback on our AI experiences? So there's so many different puzzle pieces just in the data gathering aspect of the research. And then from there, of course, you have the next step of synthesizing that data, choosing different ways to find meaning from that data, mitigating bias, confirmation bias, for example, as much as possible, bringing in our domain experts to get their take on what did we learn from all of these research sessions. And then the most critical part is, one thing is collecting the information, the other thing is implementation of that information. So how do you go from synthesis to actionable insights that actually kind of rally around the team to make product design decisions and business decisions based upon what our clients really need that can improve their day-to-day life? And so I think that's, just my different take on a fact-based system.
No, that's actually really good. I mean, I don't think it conflicts. I mean, I think, your definition of fact-based is really good, because it is important. It's important what you get from subject matter experts versus, the type of annotation that sometimes a lot of AI systems have historically learned on substandard annotations, not because the annotators themselves were substandard, but because they were given information without any context in many cases, of which to make quick determinations about what that content was, and then that's what has led to a lot of this bias and everything. And you're absolutely right that part of the experience of gathering the knowledge, knowledge capture itself has to be, done with all of those parameters involved that you're discussing. That's really crucial. Yeah, it's a great definition. Yeah.
I appreciate the varying definitions, how they're all complementary, but I think this kind of gives us a perspective into some of the core components of working in this distributed network that we call the internet. We have the means of acquiring information, the means of storing and representing that information, the means of searching for that information, whether it's a high quality or a low quality query, and then we have the means of representing and retrieving that information, whether it's a summary through like an LLM, or if it's giving you pages and pages or textbooks of information, so you can go and do your own interpretation. But let me take a step back and ask, what is the importance of content for an individual and for an organization?
Well, to me, I think that very much is about building trust and credibility, because in the end, content is what can represent you, your brand, your clients, online or anywhere really. Like, content can be anything, like also the out of home advertising department. Like, if you think about it, that's a really big opportunity of telling a story about you and your company, and the ability to make the difference also in amongst your competitors. So building a story that is compelling, that fills in the gap of what people want to know about you. And I think this is what makes content strategic. So it's the ability to narrate yourself and to be able to build credibility, because you can storytell your experience and your expertise. So I think it's really, good content lets you click with your potential customer like more actively. So if you're able to, attract new customers, existing ones engaged by creating valuable content that has to address their needs. And then content needs to be distributed and needs to be, of course, fact-based, because we can't just make up claims or something. So in that way, I think that also what I was telling yesterday, the point of my presentation was good content and structured data. Structured data in an optimized way, so without over-optimizing, because I was also reading some late comments of Gary Eilis. He's a Googler, and he said something that startled me, because he said that he really doesn't like when SEOs and especially when working with structured data, they try to manipulate Google into thinking that there's some sort of authorship. So I was thinking about that, and I thought,
sorry, some sort of what? Some sort of, what did you say again? Some sort of
authorship.
Authority, like
authority.
some higher authority.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So he said the concept of SEO control data is what is not being a good signal for Google. And so I thought how much structured data is actually doing good, because I'm seeing a lot of over-optimized web pages with content, like ever-ending content on the page. Is that doing good to the user? Also in terms of UX, of course, because that's also something that plays a role. So yeah, there is a lot right now about this.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with Beatrice's two main points. One is that the content is very, very important for you. It tells so many things. It's actually very close to your identity, like right, as maybe as an individual or maybe as a company, depending on the level of representation. So in essence, yeah, I definitely agree. We should never forget about the credibility of the content. So nowadays, it's very easy to have lots of dubious content out there. Whenever we are sharing things out there, we should make sure that there is a way to verify some of all of our claims. For example, in my company, it's very, very important to verify the claims that we make with regards to functional benefits of food ingredients, for instance, right? Do we know whether consuming too much strawberry is good for your health or not? Do we know whether it's highly activating or not? Yes, we do, and we can verify that based on the provenance of the respective data set. So this is very, very important. The second thing that Beatrice also mentioned, I also agree, so spot on twice, with regards to the not so high level of entrance. I mean, you don't need to over engineer a solution, right? It should be what I call quick and dirty, but let's call it simple enough to be useful, right? Because sometimes we go to the other end and we come up with overcomplicated solutions that are very poor in UX. So yeah, and just a minor remark, also content is what will bring us then to context. So in essence, it will then bring you to a more holistic view. When you combine multiple pieces of content, you could then get to a more holistic view with regards to the information that you have stored. But maybe we can touch this point later on in this discussion.
Stratos, I agree with your comment as well. I literally wrote down just now, simple enough to be usable. I think that's a great way to think about the usability of content. And I work with a few content designers on our team and get to see a little bit of how they work and how they think. And a big aspect of how that relates to, for example, my trustworthy AI domain space is really tailoring content to different types of personas. Personas are this conceptual design thinking sort of method that enables our team to empathize with who our users are. So it's like a set of user groups that kind of characterizes what their pain points are, what their needs are, so we can better tailor our messaging in our content to somebody like a data scientist, for example, which would be very different content than someone who's more on the business side of AI.
Margaret, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm sort of like, at this point, I'm interested in really listening to what you guys have to say. I think that this whole issue between the SEO, like how to make the content itself more attributable and accurate, and related back to its provenance, back to its source, and where did that come from. I mean, I think that there's an awful lot of people who all really have this same vision, and that and so we want the user interfaces to be simple. But I also feel like that we went through a phase over the past decade of user interfaces, especially in social media systems, being too simple and too frictionless. I use the example of, because let's think a little bit about how people use the web. So I'm a big passionate evangelist for embedded metadata as well in image content, because I feel like we threw the baby out with the bathwater. That a lot of people stripped that content out of images that was incredibly valuable, and in many cases connected the resource itself to its origin, and maybe what someone would have thought about it. Flickr did a very good job of leaving a lot of content, leaving a lot of metadata attached to the images, so we have that content we can still work with in a lot of Flickr content. But for a while, Facebook just threw out everything, Google threw out everything, Twitter threw out everything. We got to a period where, and in fact, I guess we get down to this marker in the road where privacy concerns, begin to, come into play, because, for example, in an image, there's a location data, which can be set in your phone with GPS location. Now, that could be incredibly handy for your own private, searching, but many people believe just flat out, I want my location data stripped out of my image no matter what. Now, that's fine, but interestingly, I think users, from a user experience point of view, users will simultaneously like say, if you ask them the question, do you want your location data stripped? Absolutely, yes, 100% strip it out of my image. I don't want it there. Don't ever ask me this question again. And then in the very next moment in their post, they will describe, hey, we were sitting here at the outside in the bar at the Hilton 5 minutes ago. Where are you? What are you doing? Okay. So, so there's conflicting behavior there, and there's, so I think and also it's just the way that, so social media systems encourage, very fast, get the most content out there as fast as possible. I don't want to think about the ramifications of my content. So, and what will happen when I put that out there? And so that's very different from, an enterprise experience, of course, from a company who's trying to brand at their assets, and they want, consistency in branding the assets. But I think those behaviors have all, led us to now where we have to have these discussions about fact-based systems, in fact, right? Like, it was that simplicity and that lack of friction, that, lack of like thinking about it. I mean, of course, we know there's bad actors out there. We know there are horrible people, pedophiles and stalkers and, domestic violence perpetrators, who are using location data badly. We know that is true. We know this is, but so when it comes to social media systems, there is a different way to think about this, for sure. But I think that we also could take a step back. I mean, there are some systems I feel like get it right. Like iNaturalist, I often cite how iNaturalist, for example, gives levels of opacity. So you can say, you don't have to say exactly where you were, on any given day and time. You can actually just say, well, I was in the UK, somewhere broadly, or I was in the southern part of the UK or something, and so you can have different levels of opacity on location. And, so you can remove some private information, flag some private information, but at the same time capture what's more valuable from the original creators of the content. I mean, this is in social systems more so than enterprise systems, like some of us are talking about too. So these are two different use cases, really. But that's just something I think about when I think about that simple. It does need to be simple. I mean, how to collect that data, but how to but also how to collect more, or think about how to organize the facts about things better. Yeah.
I think you bring up a very good point. Collectively, this conversation builds upon it, everybody's different perspectives, but my preconceived notions going into this conversation was a lot more simplistic, and it's true. Things don't exist in isolation. We consume information to have a thought. We use that thought and reason to develop a decision and make an action and get feedback from our environment and learn and do and repeat and build a society and interact with each other. But social media and academic content and commercial interest, they all have different motivations. There's information, there's misinformation, there's polarization, there's influence, there's commercialization, there's all these different Asians. So can we talk about the importance of trustworthiness or making these systems reliable, or at least peering behind these motivations behind the content?
That's a great question. I think to piggyback off of what Margaret was bringing up, it's how do you use these different types of fact-based systems and these different types of content responsibly is another way that I could interpret trustworthy AI. So in the field that I work in, there's many components to that. They actually break it down into different categories. But at a high level, trustworthy AI is revolving around things like explainability. For example, if we're talking about AI, can you understand how the AI arrived at that prediction outcome? Can you understand the transparency of what data was being used, what features were being used, the algorithms that were being used to create that prediction output? And these outputs can have, we tend to forget it can have real consequences on day-to-day people's lives. So it's a huge responsibility in terms of AI governance, AI compliance as well, which I know there's a whole bunch of different laws coming up, such as the EU AI Act, for example. So many factors to consider in that aspect of trustworthy AI alone. But some other aspects as well is the AI robust against changes in the data? For machine learning, for IBM z/OS, about a month ago, we launched the new version of this platform. And what it enables data scientists to do, the people who are building the AI models, they can import and deploy their AI model onto MLZ. And then from there, that's just the beginning, right? Once your AI is live, it's connected to a real business application, it's collecting real customer data. What happens with the AI? Is it still performing as you intended it to? You have to monitor that AI continuously for all aspects of trustworthy AI.
So
yeah,
a question.
I think you.
Sorry. Just a quick question to Talia. So you do have some KPIs that you are monitoring in this case?
APIs,
Actually,
yes,
yes,
definitely a part of it.
actually quantifiable KPIs that you can monitor at the end of, I don't know, every week or something. And
KPIs, okay.
yes, KPIs, yes.
Yes, the metrics, yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So for explainability, if I'm breaking that pillar of trustworthy AI down a bit further, is one of the aspects is feature importance. For example, an AI model can have 40 to 100 different features, different attributes of data, depending on what that model is being used for. And so one of the aspects of data science and AI is you have to look at those features. You have to see which of the features, let's say maybe top 10, are most important to contributing to the impact of how the AI is arriving at a prediction output. And by looking at those top features, you can see if, for example, a set of transactions are easily able to be explained. Again, showing those top features led to this AI explainability output that gives more transparency into what the model is doing. So it avoids this black box sort of AI model problem that we tend to see in very early AI systems. In terms of more specific metrics, though, if we're thinking about a different aspect of trustworthy AI, like AI drift detection, drift refers to when an AI model is degrading over time. Think about it this way, right? Just like humans need oxygen, AI needs data. And if the data is based on humans, and we know that humans, by virtue of being human, we change all the time. I think that's the only consistent thing about humans is that constant changing of where you live, where you work, or the people around you. There's different data points that are changing all the time. So the AI needs to be robust against those data changes. So we look at things, for example, like feature drift. Are the features changing over time? Is that something that we can consider? And there's specific mathematical scores to get those specific metrics that you're talking about as well.
Okay. Many thanks. Apologies, Beatrice, for jumping in. I was just very interested in, discussing ways to evaluate, the trustworthiness and how trustworthy the systems are. So, many thanks for that.
It's totally very interesting. In fact, I think you touched you touched the point. It's data. Data is what make AI systems trustworthy. So, but again, what is trustworthiness? Like, it's also a conception that can vary among the people you are talking to. So, for example, yesterday I had dinner with one of my best friends, and she's a teacher, and she said, I can recognize a lot of my students just doing their homeworks. She's a teacher at in a high school with ChatGPT. So she said, I can automatically understand. And she said, I really think that I would say, she said, they forgot to add, write like a 14-year-old school student. So she got it, because like what makes the results more grounded to realistic expectation is what's in the prompt. But then again, the result is based on what data the model is trained, and I think there's not enough transparency on that. So this is also why when we build our own models for our clients, they are knowledge graph based. They are grounded in the client's data, and this makes a huge difference. But also see that in the results that we get, because sometimes we do A/B testings with other tools, and if the model just guesses what word comes after, or if the model can understand that, what comes after, but is based on data that it's already there. We have a description, we already have a description, we have all the product attributes, and we define the attributes that we want to see in the final result. And that makes that the level of trustworthiness in that case is much higher. Still, you have to validate, like there has to be a human in the loop, but
yes,
it's much better results. But yeah, trustworthiness is totally about data.
Exactly. that makes sense. And yeah, I think all of us working at the symbolic AI domain are very happy that these kinds of technologies and approaches have been greatly appreciated recently, working in conjunction with statistical AI. So in essence, yes, as I'm also working on knowledge graphs, there is a strong element of grounding there, right? You create the model, at least the core model. You have to have a lot of control in the ingestion of the data. You have close collaboration with domain experts. And I'm always happy in various roles that I had in the past, whenever I had close collaboration with domain experts and especially non-tech people, because they give you definitely another kind of perspective into how to formulate the model and make things that are actually practically useful for the end user. So in essence, yes, I'm definitely a big advocate of explainability and trustworthiness, which are built in, at least to a great extent in symbolic AI approaches.
Yeah, it's funny to see how the human is intertwined in the conversation, even if we haven't said that like explicitly. Like the human is very important at every phase of this development, because also for us, what works is continuously training and fine-tuning our models based on the feedback from our clients. So when they go through our AI-generated content, they have some comments, and that with which we can retrain the models and produce better outputs. So the human is like the most fundamental part, at least for how we use AI internally. But I totally agree on that. Like the humans are really the ones who are bringing like essential qualities. So we have critical thinking, the judgment, the creativity, and the domain expertise, which are like the background of everything else.
Exactly, spot on.
I like what Beatrice and Margaret are saying. I mean, I like what everybody's saying, but in two particular pieces of this conversation, we've said that humans are entwined with information systems and the internet, whatever, and that there's this sort of incentive to make information retrieval a frictionless process. But do we really want to reduce the reasoning capabilities of humans by giving summaries, or do we want to have search engines also give you questions for you to refine your own query? Because sometimes we have a determined size or scope of what we're looking for, but maybe we need to understand or ask other questions to expand our research so that we can come up to better ideas or better questions. Um,
Yeah, I think one of the things that's in all of what everyone's saying is because I really agree with the things Stratos is saying, especially about just the fact that we, we come from a symbolic background, and we're really keen on symbolic, the use of symbolic tech to build graphs, because they're very explainable. We can use inference to see exactly where this piece of data came from. But I think that media literacy, data literacy, computing literacy, I think those definitions are like rapidly changing. I think that like what passed for computer literacy 15 years ago is not true anymore. I think that, it used to be that we didn't even really have these conversations out in the wild, so to speak, about what is symbolic AI and what is, statistical AI. And now we have people using systems who don't really understand the difference between those two things, and kind of need to. They need to understand when they're interacting with an AI system that it's working off of predictive text or, the next token. I talk to a lot of people who really do not understand how images are being described by AI systems. And it is complicated. There's, how the clip system was created, and how, and the evolution of decades of kind of frictionless annotation led us down into these spaces with very generic, very flattened summaries of the world, and of course they're getting better, but they're also not. It's very odd. I'm testing every single day, and of course every single day you can also get answers from predictive text systems that are non-reproducible. I mean, they give you a different answer every single time. And I have to say that one of my pet peeves is listening to people say, yeah, but that's just like humans too. A human can't tell you what a specific part on a car is. Most humans can't tell the difference between a red kite and a, red-shouldered hawk or something. I mean, okay, so what? We don't need to know those things anymore. We don't, and we don't need to have systems that reliably return those kinds of results for us. If I found myself wanting to ask a question the other day in a search engine, and I thought, and it was about a complicated topic, something about energy and something. And I thought, I have absolutely no idea whether the answer that I will receive will be truthful at all when I ask this system this question. I do not know what it will be giving me. And, we just live at a very, very live in very, very complex times where, there's lots of specialists. Everybody's a specialist at something. Even if it's your grandmother who's a specialist at, canning some sort of fruit, or making lace, or, something like that, right? Everyone's a specialist at something. And I feel like we're losing that somehow in this predictive text world. And the only way to capture that is through some symbolic systems. So
Manuela Santos asked a very good question. Transparency is a good point that Thalia brought up. However, companies and also individuals try to protect some of their information through the algorithm and not show everything. We can say that people do not like to show the recipe. How can we create transparency for users while at the same time protecting their knowledge? I guess that goes to opacity, right? How much information can you share? Um, I don't know. I leave it to you guys.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a difficult problem to solve for, especially in the AI realm. For example, let's say you're working with a business who needs to build an AI model to solve some sort of business problem, but they don't want to give you their confidential data about their customers, right? And also you have to consider things like GDPR, especially if you're based in Europe, right? There's legal consequences and compliance consequences to consider. So you absolutely have to be careful with, are you protecting people's data privacy first and foremost? And so thinking along those lines, for example, if that company still wants to build that sort of AI model for their business, do they need to take every single piece of customer data and input it into that model? Probably not, right? It depends on what problem you're solving. For example, let's say you're trying to create some sort of AI model, let's say a machine learning model that's categorizing customer segments. So this customer segment has a higher chance of purchasing this type of product versus maybe a different one. If you're building that type of AI model, you probably don't need data such as your customer's eye color. That feature in the data set wouldn't make sense. You probably don't need to know their full address or anything like that, right? So there's ways where you can be very intentional with the type of data that you're collecting, making sure that that is being properly used, and also informed consent is super, super important. If you're getting customer data, are those customers aware of how you're using their data, where that data is being stored? Do they have access to perhaps take back their data, right? You have data rights as a person. And I think people forget that sometimes, especially in the age of information, the age of AI. It's more important than ever to really consider what data you're putting out there as well. So take ownership of your own data privacy as well. But also, it's really important to consider those larger questions, especially for the people who are in the room building those AI models. What is the intent of the data that you're gathering?
That also kind of brings up intellectual property and privacy.
Yeah.
When you contribute knowledge to a platform, there's a lot of stuff coming out. If you put things on any kind of platform, I'm just gonna say, dang, what was it? Stack Overflow. People have contributed throughout all of time. How do you solve this problem? Blah blah blah. Eventually, someone says, "I want to license the information from Stack Overflow to produce an LLM that can help you solve code-related problems." Who owns that? And do users have the permission to take it back, or is everything given to the corporation for it to profit? Um, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very complex. I mean, for me, coming from a symbolic background, knowledge graph background, structured techniques, it's pretty clear to me that we've had this technology all along. It's called, you put the copyright in the image, you attach some code, you attach a bit of RDF, which is completely transparent, in an RDF triple store, and you say, okay, this is, this is, I own this copyright, and I only want it used in this way. And, I think that we're at a very tricky, odd time in history with these ideas that fair use means, a company can scrape everything off the web and call it their content. And I in the name of innovation. I think that's kind of odd. And, it's a difficult, I think we've had the technology for a long time. I think Tim Berners-Lee envisioned the technology a long time ago, which was to, be able to have access control that would be, the access control itself would be transparent. So you would know, but yet you could maintain your privacy over data and allow companies to use your data for specific purposes, and so that you could be compensated for your data. And so there are ways to build these kind of systems that are both transparent and protect people's privacy. It's just that we're not putting money into those systems, and we're not putting money into that. And, it's like we're always going down the other path and then backtracking. When it comes to innovation, like, oh, let's just innovate. Oops, oh gosh, we're not able to produce reproducible results, and we're not able to protect people's privacy, and we're not able to do any of this stuff, but we're going to keep doing it anyway. So I'm a little bit vocal about my feelings about that, because I think we've had the technology to have much more factual systems and factual, transparent, and protective systems for a very long time. And we've not innovated in that path. We've gone a different way.
But it takes more work. That's the thing. I mean, sometimes innovation makes us lazy, and we go the easy way.
Easy way.
And then happens what you said, Margaret. We go, oops, we shouldn't have done that. Let's go back. Things like that. But yeah. I was also very hesitant to respond because it's a very complex issue, right? The question that the member of the audience raised. For example, in my case, for the company I'm working for, we don't have people's data, so that's not an issue, but we have lots of internal data that we ourselves generate in-house. For example, we have two Michelin awarded star chefs who personally smell and taste food ingredients every day, hundreds of them. They have certified palettes, and they can distinguish how pungent it is, how spicy these things are. This is our gold mine. This is not something we can share openly out there. But on the other hand, most of us in the company, we are champions of openness. We would like to share things out there. So what we do is we share little slices of the data out there. Why? To show to the public and to potential clients that, look, we are, let's say, to be trusted. These things are generated by actual experts, certified experts, but it's a little teaser for you to try and buy our services. So we are trying to balance, let's say, both balls, right? On one hand, we try to be a bit open as we can, but on the other hand, we need to protect the IP that is in-house, and this is what brings us a competitive advantage. So, having worked both in academia and in the industry, I can see a big difference there, because in the academia, okay, we are more open. You can openly share data sets. It's part of the process. I mean, I was very much into that. But being working in the industry, you have to protect some of the industry's of the enterprise's secrets. I don't know, for good or for bad, but this is how the game is played. However, structured is the way to go, I think, because the lazy path that we mentioned earlier is, you look, there's all this content out there, unstructured, scrape it, and we'll see about it. We'll figure it out.
We'll see what it is.
Yes. No, I think structured is the way to go, and I'm happy that the tech world and the rest of the world, the non-tech, begin to realize that, I think. And the LLM hype will give more credit to that. I think it will prove that LLMs are not an information retrieval machine. They are for something else, other kinds of functions, but not an information retrieval machine. Symbolic AI, knowledge graphs, structured data, in essence, that's a way to go when you are looking for information retrieval, powerful information retrieval.
Yeah, I think that what will make AI systems future-proof is how the systems are able to detect biases and to mitigate them. I think that the final biggest value, also what will motivate companies to invest even more in those AI, is trying to find the right recipe to encode the factual knowledge that can be used to identify and mitigate the biases that are generated by AI algorithms. In one way, knowledge graphs can do that, but not only, but in the end, I think that a lot of the return on investment will be measured by the reduced costs that are associated with biased decision that the AI is causing. I think in the end, that will play a very big role.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One last thing I want to add to the conversation here is, especially when we're talking about aspects of trustworthy AI like transparency, explainability, robustness, bias detection, as was just mentioned here, interpretability is another one as well. It's important not to just think about those aspects at the very end when the AI is spitting out something. It's important to think about those aspects at every stage of the AI model lifecycle journey, from the very inception of when a business has a problem they're trying to solve, all the way through the data preparation phase, building and training a model, then deploying a model into a live production environment and monitoring that model as it's going live, and monitoring it over time, because the data is going to be changing over time as well. So it's continuous trustworthy AI monitoring at every stage, especially for technology like AI, where you definitely need to have a human in the loop.
I just want to say that all this conversation about food is making me hungry. But it also brings a good point to what Talia is saying about the manufacturing of a trustworthy, explainable, interpretable, responsible system that monitors bias or data drift. If we were to look at a bread factory, you harvest wheat, you turn the wheat into flour, you add water and other ingredients, and then ferment it, and then you bake it. But at each point, you need to make sure that the bread that you're making is not going to kill people or that it meets certain quality standards. So that same physical analogy can be looked at for the data. The data needs to be harvested and nutritious. The data needs to be milled and used in a usable format. The data needs to be fermented or adapted to a model that helps it be used in the function or the form that you need it. And then you need to make sure it's not rotten, right? Or that it's fresh for the consumption of the users. Um,
Exactly.
I'm not
Right.
the one making people hungry now.
you made me hungry, and then I had to talk
That
about
made me hungry. I was like, wow, great.
That was
Great.
a great analogy.
It
I
really-
love that analogy. And yeah, when someone's tasting the food, do they know how it was made? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Great analogy.
I'm gonna go get some ciabatta bread after this.
Right, I know. Should be eating
So,
while we're doing this.
how do we all right, how do we measure the ROI or the utility of content or information? I'll leave it there.
This is one of my favorite questions. From a research perspective, that's super, super important. And there's 4 ways that I like to target that one. I'll keep it short so everyone else has a chance to answer as well. The first one is your research ops impact. How much time did it take you to gather data and report those insights out? Consider time on task for research operations impact. The second one I would say is design impact. Out of all the insights you've gathered, how many of those user-centered insights have been implemented into the product design, especially for AI products? A third one is, of course, business impact. Did your research, content, whatever it is, did it lead to some sort of sales growth, market growth for your business? And then the last one is probably the most elusive because it takes so much time to see, but a cultural impact, right? I think content, research, for example, is your team requesting more research studies? Are they coming to you for your domain expertise? Could be an example of a cultural type of impact as well.
Those were all great points. In our case, actually, we recently made an internal exercise to calculate how what the return of investment is with regards to deploying a structured knowledge graph, let's say, right? Because it's rather fresh. So in essence, I'm not going to go through the figures, and actually, it was an exercise that lasted for a couple of months. I was interviewing internal colleagues and trying to measure a few things. So in essence, what we saw is that the ways to measure how successful is when you impose a more structured, let's say, way to represent your data, right? And we found out that there are 2 axes. One is the time-related gains that you have. So how faster or how, let's say, more efficient your operations are horizontally in the enterprise. Well, okay, just for reference, in our case, we saw improvement of 30 to 70% in operations. So in essence, this was a rather substantial improvement. And the second one was mostly business benefits that deploying the new technology or the new formalisms brings to you. So in essence, when we started working with the knowledge graph, it immediately gave us a few advantages. It opened up a few doors for reaching new milestones as a company. For example, sales predictions. We could reach that milestone through graph embeddings. That was technology that was now made possible through the knowledge graph, for instance. Or the LLM plus KG synergy, plus knowledge graph synergy, that we couldn't do before. So in essence, it gave us advantages in 2 pillars. and in multiple fronts. But I don't believe that many enterprises actually get down to business and try to measure that, because it's not very easy to do. As I told you, it took us a couple of months of intense effort and interviews with my colleagues to get to those numbers. And I don't think that's something that every company, especially smaller ones, are willing to do. But I think it's worth it, because it will give you an overview of what you're doing well and what maybe you shouldn't be investing in.
Yeah, it's kind of how also we try to track down ROI, but mainly the final decision comes from our clients, because in the end we want to adopt how they are tracking their return on investment. So when it comes to AI, sometimes to AI and technology, sometimes they don't have like they haven't done anything before. Like most companies that come to us didn't know what structured data knowledge graphs were before they talked to us. So we help them in defining the different use cases. It may be for a big company when we are producing product description at scale for a client that as big as Luxottica, for example, where they have like thousands of websites, different for every country in the world, for different brands. And you are able to produce product descriptions that are fact-checked, fact-based, knowledge graph-based, and the quality is good enough, then the value is like twofold. It's increased efficiency, reduced cost, and then eventually increased revenue. So we always try to make those final decisions with the client though, and try when we see that the client is thinking about some weird definition of ROI, we try to bring them towards what would be the most suitable ROI definition for the specific use cases that we are working on. Because when we work with our clients, we do different things. We start with knowledge graph, product knowledge graph, and then we generate text based on their needs. And then we also generate dynamic internal links with our AI. So we are really like some SEO suite that is knowledge graph based. And it's not the easiest thing to let the client understand what will be their return. So what are we getting? Because sometimes, in SEO, you're tracking clicks, but sometimes they might say, yeah, but we are not tracking clicks. So we are constantly building conversation on this front. It's not the easiest thing to define what makes the difference in the bottom line. So
I love that. I made it very black and white with the financial, but the world isn't financial. It's not just transactions. There's a cultural output. There's a financial output, and some things aren't easy to measure. I mean, you see an advertisement on the wall, and you're not going to be a direct buyer, and you're not going to have that problem. But if you encounter somebody, you might tell them about it. You never know how the world works in this interconnected system that we're in. So, very cool.
Right. I was going to say, because I feel much the same way as Beatrice, like it's very difficult to know the value that you're going to be adding, except that I think that there's an enormous, ROI for society at large, I believe, in putting time into quality, and that one of the things I'm always kind of speculating about is, because we're taking image description itself and turning it into graphs, just how much information is enough, and of what you want to capture in the content. Like, how much time is that going to take to get that deep and get that precise on something? Is more precision going to get you more value ultimately? And what does that even mean ultimately? And it's for different environments too. It's if I have cloud pictures, I could have the annotations done by just the person who made the picture. I could have it made by a meteorologist. I could have it made by a climate specialist or something. I mean, I could have it made by an editorial team for I could have it made from an artistic point of view. Like you can go kind of crazy on getting the quality of those annotations very deep and very, very rich. And so we have you have to kind of make that decision about what's the best value you're going to get for the amount of time. Because even in the space that I work in with linked data, matching to an appropriate linked data term is sometimes easier said than done. I mean, sometimes it's quite easy, sometimes it's it can take a little while to search down the right linked data term if you're describing things generically. And we have a pretty good system for doing that, but again, it's like the value. And I think that it's a little bit hard. I think sometimes the question comes down to what is the value going to be for society, for us, and that ROI is the wrong question sometimes. Yeah.
I had a situation where my cat ate into a bag of trail mix, and we were thinking, my girlfriend and I, what the hell is this cat gonna die, explode? What's gonna happen? There were pieces of chocolate, pieces of raisins, and nuts, and we're like, are cats poisoned by any of these elements? And there was no straightforward answer. Looking through Google, we had to call the vet poison control to see if and they can give us a subject matter expert opinion. And they said, yeah, we need to put up a blog post or something because people keep calling about that. But no, the cat was fine. It's just a destructive gremlin. But the point is that the long tail stuff that it's hard to pick up, or kind of in case of emergency you need to get it. How do you quantify the value of that long tail information? Is it the life of a pet? Is it the bill of going to the veterinarian? Is it the emotional grief, or what is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ROI is a weird term. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of like what we were saying yesterday, like quality of content online is twofold. So on one hand, we want to bring traffic on our website as website owner. On the other hand, we also want to feed the web and provide the users with content that is of good quality, so that like the web community has something in return. So we don't want to spam. Right. So that's like a twofold benefit.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think with that, thank you all for joining this wonderful panel. I certainly got very hungry, but I learned a lot. That's the most important part. I think we all shared some nice learnings here. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was great.
Stick around. We'll take a break. We'll get a sandwich, and then we'll be back in like 20 minutes or so. So, yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.